All right, real excited to talk to my next guest on the Sports Card Nation guest line. He's involved with something near and dear to my heart. If many people who listen to this show will know that I had an LCS of my own a long time ago. I'm old, 92 to 97. But my next guest is into the franchising of LCSs. We're going to get into that at some point. But let me, without further ado, Mr. Mike Martin of Replay Sportscards. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it. Love talking shop, love talking sports cards. So
no problem. Before we get into really the nuts and bolts of what you do and stuff, kind of, we all have hobby beginnings, right? Well, sometimes they're similar, sometimes they're different. For you, when did the hobby start?
Yeah, I mean, it started as a kid, Pokemon, and then I always say, like, the one thing that, like, I was obsessed with was the showdown cards, like the baseball showdown game. And so I started collecting those, collecting my favorite players, guys I love watching, and then really got into it, right, with, back when I was a kid, it was all about the relics, the bat relics of Big Papi and some of my Mets, right? And so I really started collecting that, and then went to college, started my career, and then randomly sitting there back in, I think it was 2019, 2018, something like that, at a family party, my cousin Tommy came up to me and he's like, "You like gambling? Like, have you heard of breaks?" And I was like, "Yeah, like, I've never heard of breaks, but you've got my attention." And so we joined a break. I hit two. I'm a big Mets fan. I hit two Pete Alonso autographs. It was his second year auto. So I guess this must have been back in 2019. And I was hooked, right? I'm like, oh, this is easy, and started really diving into that side of things. And, my cousin along the way, just coaching me as a small breaker, two people watching me, and just having fun with it. And I just fell in love with it, started visiting shops. And from there, it was game over. I was in the hobby full on. And yeah, I absolutely love it. It's a lot of fun.
And I'm a fellow Mets fan, so excited to hear.
Oh man,
be speaking to another one.
Absolutely.
We got a new lineup this year. Speaking of Alonso, he's not there, but there are some fresh new faces, and we got some young pitchers. So I'm optimistic. I don't know. I can't speak for you, but I'm optimistic for the 26th season.
I'm always optimistic, so we'll see. I'm the one, I'm World Series bound every year, no matter what the team looks like. So it won't be any different this year for me.
And listen, I don't know how long you've been. I grew up with the Wilpons running the show and not spending money, right?
Yeah.
And so now it's a little bit of a different era under Steve Cohen, and at least he's going for it. And
for sure,
that's a nice place. That's a nice place to be as a Mets fan. Prior. When you compare to some of the before, right? So, that's always a good thing. So, you've gotten to learn sort of the landscape, the terrain, like you mentioned, breaking. I know I was kind of joking with you before we went on the air here that, I'm old. So if you would have told the younger version of me that someday people would open your packs for you, I would have thought you're nuts. But I've said this. Mike, and I'll see if you agree with me. I think, love them or hate them, the breakers have saved kind of the wax industry. We're not there anymore, but there was a point. Wax boxes didn't always sell out. There were some dud products that started to collecting dust, but I think breaking has really, we don't see that hardly anymore, if at all. Like everything, we're seeing bowling cards and cornhole, like everyone, if the price points fair and what, then anything will potentially sell. So I always said,
something to chase. There's always something to chase, right?
Yeah. So I always say you don't have to like breaking, but you got to give them their proper due and credit. And it did save. More so for the card manufacturers, but it saved sort of I don't want to say save, maybe that's too strong a word, but it definitely aided where products maybe in the past would start to collect dust or have to be severely reduced or whatnot. Now, not so much because there's always a clientele for it. When you look at where we're at, in the hobby now, we're seeing, speaking of card stores and breakers and even card shows, we're seeing more of everything. There's more card shows, there's more breaking outfits. Obviously, I think we're getting new people in the hobby as well as collectors. I mean, how do you overall see the hobby as a whole? Kind of a state of the union, if you will.
Yeah, no, I love it. I mean, look what Ruben and Fanatics are doing right now. You're getting all the athletes, all the influencers, celebrities involved in it. It's amazing, and I think it's a great time to be a collector. There's going to be so many new products coming out, totally new designs that are licensed that we've not seen. Obviously, with the transition with Fanatics and Topps taking over the basketball and football, and so it's an exciting time. It really is, and I think. I get a lot of opportunities to speak with new collectors that are just getting into it. And there's so many different products, so many different avenues you can take, a $30 box all the way up to a $30,000 box. And so being able to have different options for people, I think is phenomenal. And honestly, especially for people getting back into it, they're dipping their toes in. They might not want to do, a $250 hobby box. Well, I'll take Topps Chrome, for example. You can get blasters for $30 to $60, depending on the market. You can hit massive cards. We had a guy in Charlotte pull the SGA glass canvas superfractor out of a $60 blaster, right? And so that kind of excitement and the different price points they allow for that, it's really great. And then for the long-term collectors too, the market's really great. In 2020, we saw the big, boom, went crazy, sky high. And then I don't like to say it crashed because it didn't. It just corrected itself back to reality. And so I would say since then, it's been pretty normal. And, the players that go crazy, their cards will go up. And, like a Bo Nix, right? I'm in our Denver shop right now. And so the Bo Nix went nuts on his playoff run. But then, again, people are realists, right? He gets injured. His cards don't plummet. They might go down a little bit, but then, we'll see him next year and they'll go right back up. And so I think we're in a really good spot with the hobby. There's a lot of great shops opening up. We're going to be opening up a ton of them, providing good customer experience. Like we were mentioning the breaks, I think just people being able to get their favorite team in some breaks for $5 is amazing, right? And they could hit a massive card and then still having the opportunity for collectors or investors to find singles and make a living out of it. There's so many people that are just flipping cards, and that's their life. That's their job, right? And they're making good money. And so I think we're in a really healthy spot. I'm excited to see some of the new basketball and football cards coming out. And I'm excited to see what Panini does as well with some of the unlicensed. I think some of those case hits could stay where they're at or maybe go down a little bit, but then it's going to be relative to the box price. So I really, really like where we're at as a hobby. And it's the reason we're growing, like a weed right now. It's been crazy, and we're really buying into the hobby. I think it's in a good spot.
Yeah, you mentioned something I want to piggyback off, right? With a lot more people sort of taking the plunge, if you will, and going full time. I just had a gentleman on the podcast named Tim Wormerling, and he, left his job to do the hobby full time. He's doing very well, and there's a lot more people doing that. Even when I started my store in '92, I was a 20-year-old kid, and it was scary because hobbies. It was a not even close to the hobby we have now, and obviously 1992. So it was scary. In the first year of my store, Mike, I had a partner named Angelo, a great guy, and the first year was tough. It was almost not a second year. We had a dinner where we sat down and like, do we continue? And if we do, we got to figure this out. Otherwise, there won't be a year 3. And we did, and obviously started doing a lot better, and we lasted, the 7 years. So, and that there was no breaks at that time. It was like, and eBay was really in its infancy stages, if at all. It wasn't even like a known commodity as we know it today. So, it was a different time, and it was tough. But I think the tough thing, and I'll see if you agree with it now, is just there's so many different directions you can go. You sort of need to sort of stand out even more so than we did in, let's say, 92. because there was let's be honest, there was less competition in 1992. But at the same time, there's also, I think, more collectors in 2026 than 1992.
For sure.
So there's more demand. I mean, just kind of, to compete, in today's market, just some of the trials and tribulations there, if you want to touch on those, and how do you, step out and kind of be on the forefront of that, if you will.
Yeah, of course. I mean, honestly, our core values, our core mission statement is building community through cards, and that's the difference. Almost everything you see within a card shop, you can buy online, right? And so, how do you get people to want to come to your shop, come back to your shop? And for us, it's honestly super simple. We hire a bunch of really good people that can speak to the cards, can educate the next generation of collectors. Be able to know who they're speaking with and how to handle that, whether it be a brand new collector or a seasoned collector. It's all about the people. It's not even about the cards. It really truly is about the people you're putting, that I'm putting this logo, Replay Sportscards logo, on a hoodie for them, and they're standing behind the counter and they're the face of Replay for these different communities we're in. That's the important thing. And that's where you can stand out. It doesn't have to be flashy lights and, crazy things in your shop. It really comes down to the experience. Like we really pride ourselves on our customer experience. Customer comes in, they're greeted when they come in. They're taken care of throughout their stay. If they are going to rip something, there's free sleeves and top loaders for them to rip. Depending on how busy the shop is, 99% of the time, we're sitting there right with them. We're helping them, sleeve and top load their cards. We're educating them on what they might have pulled. For those that, might pull a big card, we can help them sell it. And so it's customer experience, but also customer journey. We want them we want Replay to be the destination for collectors in all these different cities. Right now we're in Charlotte, North Carolina, Boca Raton, Florida, Denver, Colorado, and we just opened up our Seymour, Indiana shop, which is our first franchise location. And we'll open up another 5 or so in the next few months throughout the country. And those are cool because every single one of those shops are locally owned, locally operated. They're not corporatized. They're owned by collectors in the community. And so hiring the right people, designating and assigning the right franchisees that are going to speak the Replay brand, put this logo on, and really treat the community and the next generation of collectors the right way. That's the way you win. It's not the flashy lights and the gamification and, you can pull this massive card. We've got these repacks, there's a clientele for repacks. For us, we really guide customers depending on what their budget and what they need. We really guide them in the direction that fits them best. And so it really comes down to people, community. I mean, we have trade nights. We have a Replay Gives Back initiative where we've collected over 2 million cards that we give out and donate to charities in not only where our shops are, but across the country. So it's just doing right. And it sounds so simple, and it sounds like it should be, how businesses operate, and it's not necessarily a given. And so we really pride ourselves in that. And I think that's the way you win in the hobby. Especially in the retail front. We stream too, but in the retail front, face to face, just making sure we're taking care of our customers.
Yeah, it's a great point. I've said this, since eBay came along, obviously auction houses, right? Nothing beats, I don't care what anyone says, I think you'll agree, Mike, nothing beats an in-person transaction, whatever that, whether that's opening a box,
right?
Pack,
yep.
You see the card, you hold the card, you know what you're getting. When you buy anything online, right, you're at the mercy of whoever's sending. And we've heard, God forbid, but we've heard the horror stories like, I didn't get sent what was pictured. It was a different condition or a different cert number, or I didn't get sent anything at all, or they sent something, but it wasn't what I bought. They switcherooskied. So nothing, I don't care, when anyone says nothing beat. That's why shows are as popular as they are. That's why LCSs are as popular as they are, right? Nothing will ever beat, an in-person transaction.
No, we opened our first shop during COVID, because people wanted to get out. People wanted to hold the cards, negotiate behind the counter. It's really easy to be, rude to someone or, be really difficult with someone online, right? You're behind a keyboard. In person, the
Lots of
negotiations and
tough
how you treat
guys, lots
someone.
of tough
A
guys
lot of
behind.
tough guys, keyboard warriors, right? I think they call them. And so it's a lot, that in-person interaction, and it's needed, right? Like, for a lot of people, cards are therapy. Cards are where they step outside of their day-to-day life and they can just enjoy something. It's a hobby at the end of the day. So many times it's like numbers this and this price, and there's people always forget about the true collectors, the people that they don't care if they open a $500 box and get a few $50 cards because they're collectors. Like that, to them, that card means a lot because they pulled it and it's their favorite player or it's a team they enjoy. And so, that personal touch is really, truly everything. And that's why, our whole business is centered around giving good retail experiences. We stream, we're live almost 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, TikTok, whatnot, eBay Live, you name it. But it's that personal in-person touch that it's invaluable. And again, cards are therapy. So people can come hang out and get their daily dose for sure.
Yeah, you mentioned opening your first store during COVID. Most of us remember it was something no one's ever really seen before or dealt with, at least on that sort of level. How nervous was that, like opening up a retail place, during a time when a lot of people were being told, like, hey, don't get too close to people and keep a distance, or if you don't have to go out and you can avoid, like, fraternalizing, please don't if you don't really have to. Like, talk about some of the trepidations or fears, if you will, and anytime you open any business under normal circumstances, right? Believe me, I know that firsthand. There's a lot of, like, nothing's guaranteed, right? At the end of the day. So kind of talk about that. Then you up sort of the degree of difficulty, like you mentioned with COVID. Kind of, go back to that time period and walk us through it, if you will.
Yeah, of course. And we opened towards the back end of COVID. We made sure we were, everything regulated. It was definitely towards the back end, but it was still, happening. I mean, we opened in Charlotte and it was a little less strict, and we were definitely abiding by that stuff. So there wasn't a ton of, safety, protocols or anything like that. It was September, right? So it was towards the back end, and people, we knew that people needed at the end of COVID to really have a place to go and talk to people, hang out. And so, but to go to your point on how scary it is starting a business, I mean, you could ask my parents when I told them I'm leaving Forbes as director of event partnerships and starting a sports card shop in Charlotte, North Carolina. They, I couldn't imagine what they were thinking, right? But I knew there was a hole in the industry of providing good experiences, not just for people that are going to spend a ton of money, but for the kids, a place where parents feel safe to drop their kids off and know that they're going to be taken care of and they're not going to be duped and they're not going to be taken advantage of. That is super, super, super important. And so to me, it was a no-brainer, but yeah, it's terrifying. Opening a second shop in a different state or a third shop in a different state. Not too long ago, from when we're recording this, last week, I was in Indiana and I had to hand the keys over to our brand to two franchisees. And again, fully vetted, fantastic guys, but that's scary as well. But it's just doing it the right way. We've had a bunch of applications come through for franchise, potential franchisees, and picking the right people. It's again, you'll hear me say it a lot, I'm sure, through our conversation. It's about the people. And so those two guys, Josh and Jason in Seymour, Indiana, again, you could ask them the same thing. Like, how scary is it, right, to take on this shop and do it in their small town of Seymour, Indiana? I mean, that shop was insane when I was there. I mean, I was there for their first 3 days and it was bonkers, jam-packed the entire time. But, again, it's finding the right people. So Josh and Jason, great dudes, guys that are going to represent Replay well. They're going to do things the Replay way. And so it's scary, but look, all things that are advantageous are scary. And so getting past that fear and diving in and trying new things, building an entire charity component to our business, opening, all the shops we're going to open, and just finding the right people to do it with. is super important. So it's definitely, we're very meticulous in how we do things, and we're very careful. But yeah, I mean, you got to get out of your comfort zone at some point, and we did. And we opened 3 shops in 3 years. Our 4th year, we moved one of the shops over to Denver. And here we are in year 5. We've got 4 franchisees signed on, and many more to come that we're in really good conversations with. So, I see Replay having 30 shops, 20 to 30 shops by the end of the year. And, our goal of 100 shops in the next 3 years, that's very real, and that's going to happen. And so it's an exciting time, but again, like you said, very scary as well.
Yeah, well, going kind of back to a hobby question, right? And you alluded to it in an earlier comment. We're seeing Fanatics and Topps now will be controlling 3 of the 4 major sports, the licensing of it. Panini is going to do some unlicensed stuff, but Topps will have 3/4. I'm old, so I grew up, and I'm sure you remember too, when you had numerous different companies producing the sports, right? You had Upper Deck and Fleer and Score and Donruss and Topps making baseball, all making football and basket, making all the sports, right? And the thing was, I like that because they had to compete, right? We had to, hey, our product's got to be better than, company A and company C, because they're coming out with this technology. You always was, what were they going to do next? What was company A, what was Topps going to do next? What was Upper Deck going to do next? My fear, and I know they got a lot of smart people in that room. They didn't get to where they are by accident. But my fear is when you have the license in and you're not really competing, it's sort of like, you could see some maybe a little rusting on their laurels. As a collector yourself, is that something you think about? How do you view that? Or would you rather see like it used to be where Upper Deck is making, the 4 sports along with Topps, and you had like more choices, if you will?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of split on it. I will say from, again, we get a lot of new collectors that check us out, and we help to educate them, and the whole new generation of collectors, we're really trying to educate them on stuff. I mean, in an ideal world, yeah, I mean, I more product, more SKUs. Like I love that type of stuff, just to see unique stuff. I'm glad, I'm excited that Topps is taking on the football and basketball, because I miss Topps Chrome and Topps Finest. Like those are some of my favorite sets. And so to be able to see that license on those 2, sports fronts is exciting. But I do think the separation is healthy as well. I think they're still competing against, or competing with the collectors, where they're getting a lot of feedback and a lot of stuff. And I think they're implementing a lot of it, which is exciting. I definitely see where you're coming from on, as far as, it'd be great to see license Flawless and license, Topps royalty, right? Like that would be really cool. I do think it's a little easier to explain to collectors too. Like you don't want that many SKUs, right? Of licensed, and it's a little easier to, hey, starting April 5th, it's going to be, Topps football. That's going to be licensed. Any football that comes out from Panini or Leaf or any of that stuff is unlicensed. And I think it helps too, because the box prices, right? If they don't have to pay for the license on that stuff, maybe some of the more expensive SKUs that were unobtainable for collectors, now they're obtainable, and so that's kind of interesting as well. Again, I think in an ideal world, that would be so cool to just see, a Wemby rookie in Upper Deck and Topps and Panini. Like that would be cool, right? But I do think the separation of that stuff is healthy. And I think, again, like, I mean, it comes down to like, you got to pay for that stuff, right? And so the exclusivity definitely, from a business perspective, makes sense. And I do think for new collectors, people that are getting into it, I think us long-term collectors would be like, oh, we can decipher, if everything was licensed, we could figure out, the values and all that stuff. But for the new collectors, I think that separation of licensing, I think, does help a little bit. So I like where it's heading. And Panini's not going anywhere. They're still going to have other sports, and they're still going to do unlicensed stuff. And I think, again, some of those box prices that were crazy with it being unlicensed, I think are going to be maybe more obtainable for people that, always wanted to rip a box of Flawless Football, but never had the ability to, right? They've got, if they do come out with a licensed version of that or unlicensed version of that, it's exciting, right? For some hobbyists that like, I can't spend 10K, but I could spend 2,000, right? And still be able to get some amazing autos of great athletes, current and Hall of Famers. And so I definitely think it would be cool. But I think it does make sense, kind of the division of licensing.
Yeah, it's a great point by you that some values may come down because of the being unlicensed, where maybe it'll be a similar product without a logo, but there's still going to be some big names still involved in it. Not across the board, but enough firepower probably to be a selling point at a lower price point. So I agree with you. That's a great point by you. I think sometimes we don't think of along those terms or along those lines, but and then, like you said, for now, Panini's still existing and not going away. There's always that cloud where they're going to sell the tops and just kind of complete the they're the last one sort of holding out, if you will.
Sure.
I hope not. I don't have any say or control of that, but I like to see them sort of remain their own company, doing their own thing. Whether even now it'll be like the little train that could, where it used to be a bigger train, but
Sure.
I hope that remains the case. But and they're still going to have their parallel, and as long as they are their own entity, they're going to still be doing the kabooms and the home and those things that they're known for. They just won't have a logo on them, as you pointed out. But there's still going to be a demand for that, as you mentioned. So we'll see. We'll see where the news. You know how this works in the hobby. There's always some news breaking at some point with acquisitions and mergers, especially as we've seen recently in the grading space. And I want to kind of segue in there. You mentioned one of your store locations, Boca Raton, Florida, home of the SGC, which is a sponsor of this program. I'm also a bulk subber for them. So obviously I'm a big fan. Being there, any relationship there, or like what's your when it comes to replay sports cards in the grading space, where do you fall there?
Yeah, I mean, so all of our replay locations, we do PSA submissions. We were doing SGC. I think with the price change, for us, it didn't make a ton of sense just with the values of cards and that type of stuff. We're always having conversations with everyone. SGC was phenomenal to us. We love the guys over there. I live literally around the block from there, so it was extremely convenient. As far as like streamlining it, especially with them being under the PSA umbrella now, we primarily submit PSA in our shops. And, again, when it comes down to values, an SGC 10 versus a PSA 10 for us, and from what we heard from our customers too, it just lended itself to PSA, and we were getting a lot more of those submissions. And so, again, that can always change. We'd love to include Beckett in our mix as well, if that comes to fruition. But right now, every single Replay Sports Cards location, we're a certified PSA dealer. We grade all of our cards through PSA. And we have a great relationship with them right now. And I see that continuing to grow and doing events with them and that type of stuff. But really good people over there. And look, a lot of people, they're not getting their cards back as quick as they might want, right? But that's it stinks, but what's amazing, that means they're getting bombarded, meaning there's so many cards getting graded and so many new collectors wanting to grade cards. So it really, in the long term, right, in the short term, 3 to 4 month range where you're waiting for your card and you're excited, it's tough. But long term, it's incredible, the volume and the amount of new collectors every single day. I mean, hundreds of new collectors are stepping into our Replay Sports Cards locations daily. And it's incredible to see being able to get them in the hobby, give them a good experience as they begin. But yeah, no, we love PSA. Again, when it comes down to value, it's difficult to ignore just the kind of value that they bring when that card is a 9 or a 10. It is important, but again, hat tip to SGC too. We love those guys, and I'm sure we'll get back on the road of submitting through them as well. But yeah, right now all of our shops do PSA submissions.
Yeah, and I get it. And it's funny because I do the bulk subbing for SGC, Mike, and I'll make this story probably shorter than it is, just for the sake of time. When they announced they were like, get that was going away, the bulk rate for bulk subbers was going away, I figured that would be the end of what I do, because I do that at card shows. And so I sent out, I have an email list. I sent out kind of a mass email. Hey, here's what happened. If I continue to do it, this would probably have to be the new price levels, that sort of thing. It's going to cost you more than, depending on how many you send in, it may cost you more than if you did it yourself. But there is the convenience of me taking care of everything. And I basically did a what say you email. What do you think? Would it be something you still want me to continue doing, or would it be something like, no offense, John, we're gonna not do it anymore at the new price levels? And I got about 80% of the responses I got back were like, we're okay with that. I'm subbing under 10 cards. It's still going to be cheaper when I'm not having to pay shipping to and fro. Sure. So I said, okay. And then my next email was like, okay, I'm going to continue it. We'll see how it goes. Like, if it's not, I'm not going to lose on it, but if it's still, I still stay, where I'm not losing money, I'll continue to do it. And I got to be honest with you, I've been surprised. Do I get as many cards? No, I'm not going to be disingenuous, but I will say this: I'm still getting more than I anticipated, and
that's great to hear.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say that's great to hear, honestly. And that's why these conversations are great. The platform you have is awesome, where we could just sit here and kind of talk shop. Because that's good to hear. I mean, I would, we've got an email blast as well. I'd be curious, especially for the Boca Local customers, if it makes sense, because even if you're Boca Local, you can't drop off in person. You still have to mail it. And so we're able to offer that service. So, it definitely, definitely entices me to think through that process again and see what the customers want. We really, almost in everything we do, we're always asking our customers what they think and feel about it. SGC was one of those where we had heard a couple and kind of just move forward with a cleaner and smoother process. But I'd be curious to see, going back to our people and seeing if that's something that, that they'd be interested in. That's good to hear, honestly.
I thought I was going to get back more like, hey, I'm probably just going to either sub somewhere else or sub myself. And I was, surprised by the response. And I've done, I think, 10, 15 shows since the bulk rate went away, and still getting, triple digits in subs at every show. So
amazing.
Yeah, I'm pleasantly surprised. And even when I got the feedback, Mike, anytime, sometimes people just being nice and, and then you say, well, let's see if, if they do what they say, and they have, they put their money where their mouth is, so to speak. And so I thought, I was just wondering, well, maybe it'll be good for a couple shows and then it'll kind of fizzle out, and that'll be the end of that. But no, it's still, the brand is still strong. It's just, again, but the wait times are bad across the board. There's, and I don't mean to belittle another grading company, but unless you're going to one of the basement, grading companies, you're not going to get your cards back as fast as you want. And that was the thing. We got spoiled with SGC. At one point, they were like 10 to 12 days. It was sort of insane. So.
I mean, yeah, we got really, and I think that's good. We got spoiled. Unbelievable. I mean, I would drop it off 3 days, 4 days later. Hey, they're ready for pickup. And, the customers get attached to that, right? And they think that that's going to be an every submission thing. And so it was a little difficult to balance that. And, it made sense in Boca. And so, hearing that, I'd be curious too on their current, times as well, and kind of how that looks. So I like it. I'll tell the guys over there. John told me to come talk to them again. So we'll hopefully they throw you something your way.
Yeah, no, they've always been, fair. It's funny too. Even when I got that call from my rep that decision was coming down from above, I hearing it in his voice, I could tell. Like, I mean, one of the first things he said is like, John, I this is a call I don't want to make, and and then he let me know what was going on. So, and
Sure.
sometimes you can tell when someone is just saying the line because it's what they're supposed to say, or it sounds good, or it's sincere and from the heart. And I could tell he was really sort of crushed by having to make that call like he said he was. And I also knew, I could get mad, but I also knew it wasn't his decision. He was just the messenger. So I had a few questions to if I was to continue to do it, what would be different as far as the process goes, and not a lot changed on that front. It's just really more on the price levels itself. So
sure,
and that's when I went to my clientele and my customer base and said, "Here's where we're at. What do you guys want to do? You're the driving force." And was surprised by as much people who like say, "Hey, we're still going to do it. Like, keep going." So and
that's
here
good.
we are. Yeah, no,
Sure.
I'm surprised, but there's just such a demand for grading. And listen,
For sure.
as someone who's a bulk subber, and I'm sure you see it too, right? Some of the stuff that gets grading, again, beauty's in the eye of the beholder, right? But there's, sometimes you scratch your head, like, unless maybe it's sentimental, but like I'm not sure why this one's getting subbed. And I've heard people refer to the time period as like the junk slab era, where just so many people are grading. But we're seeing now with the new price levels that people have to make more of a conscious decision. Like, do I pay that to have this graded?
For
Like,
sure.
where do you see when you hear that? And I'm sure you've heard the term, junk slab era. Kind of, how do you see that when that sort of aspect when it comes to the grading niche?
Yeah, I've actually not heard that term, but that's actually hilarious. I like that. I honestly, and again, kind of goes back to what we're like, I really do think like there's just that many more collectors, right? Like, and so if there's more collectors, going to be more cards submitted. But I agree with you entirely. I think the idea of having to make that conscious decision, it's not $18, right? Or, it's a change, right? And so you have to make that decision. It's going to help them on the submission front. Less people, grading stuff that, I mean, you've been to shows. I mean, you've seen what some people are, grading. And you're like, what is going on? Like, why would you grade that base, whatever, right? And non-rookie, vet, whatever it is. And so honestly, what we do at Replay is really cool. I don't need to make a fortune on PSA. I need to have a customer for life. And so that's always our mentality. And so people come in, they could drop 20 cards off with us. Our guys will go through them, tell them like it's not worth sending this card. And again, they might say, hey, it's PC, let's send it. Totally makes sense. And then we'll review the cards. We'll kick any cards that wouldn't, grade well enough for where they would be happy, right? 8+, 9 to 10 range. We'll kind of give some ranges. And it ends up resulting in less, top line revenue for us. But it has, the trust in us and saves the customer money in the long term, even if we're a few bucks above what, PSA is, for us to make our money. There's also shipping involved and insurance and all of that stuff, which we're fully covered. So it's a real full service, one price, everything included, no hidden fees. And then on top of that, just the expertise to be able to say, hey, this is 15 raw, $37 is a PSA 10. It's not worth sending, at these prices. And so and then we give the customer the decision, of course, like if they want to grade it for personal collection or if it means something to them. That's the other thing people get lost in. It's not always about, you could grade the amount of $15 Met autos that I grade, you would be beside yourself. But I do it because it's staying in my PC forever. And so like that's the other side of it. It means, if it means something to you, it doesn't matter if it's $5 or $5,000, you can grade it. But again, back to your point, I think just it helps people understand like you don't have to grade everything. You should be grading the stuff that is going to increase the value, or again, on the collector side, what means something to you. And so, I think, again, like, I really look at a lot of things that are happening in the hobby, and I feel really good about them. Do I want PSA to be lower? Absolutely. I'd love to. It would help me, sleep at night, knowing that it's a few bucks cheaper, when I'm grading these junk Mets, Rangers, Knicks, Jets cards. It would help me, but I do see the value in because the time and the energy that it takes at their offices to make it a little more of a conscious decision.
Yeah, it's a great point, and it's always nice. You're trying to steer the customer into a situation where they're not going to get beat over the head in a dark alley, just to use
exactly.
an analogy, right? And it's funny when people sub their stuff through my service, I'll never say anything unless, like, now I do have some that will say, hey, look at these 10 cards. If they were yours, what would you send? And then I will. If they open the door and want my honest opinion, and then I will, and they'll say, like, John, be honest. Like, you're not gonna hurt my feelings. I trust your judgment, type of thing. Unless I see something, where I'm getting that cards at the table and I see like an obvious defect, like a ding corner, and I'll be like,
sure,
you see this, right? And they're like, yeah. But much like you said, they're like, that was one of the first cards, my dad got me, so I want to like get it slipped. So there's a reason behind that. And you don't know until you you don't know that until you have a conversation about it. And so I try to be there in those terms, but I also, I try to be helpful, but without stepping on toes. But if someone asks, I'll gladly say, hey, I'd probably send, these 4, and I'd wait on these 6. But I always, end with like, hey, they're your cards. Like, you do, whatever you want. If you want to send them all, send them all. But if you're asking me, that's how I see it. So, and people, I think, appreciate, the honesty, and I think they know I'm giving them an honest assessment and trying to be fair to them. All right, let's talk a little bit about how Replay Sports Cards works. Now, you started off right with your own stores, like you own them, but now you're like you mentioned, franchising. Without giving out necessarily the secret sauce, but what does that entail? How does that work? If someone is interested, just how the process goes.
Sure. Well, the secret sauce is simple. It's be a good person and treat your customers right. Honestly, genuinely, right? And that comes with people and all of that. So Replay, we started in 2021. We opened our first shop in Charlotte, North Carolina. And then we opened 3 more. We opened in Charleston, Boca Raton, back to back, three shops in 3 years. We actually moved our, so I live in Boca right now. My business partner, Brent, lives in Charlotte. And then my other business partner, Mike Weinberger, lives in Denver. And so it made sense to move the Charleston shop to Denver. We've got oversight of the 3 corporate locations, especially as we're expanding, and as much as we're traveling, to make sure that we've really got a grasp on the shop. And so we hire great general managers in each of the shops, great assistant managers, great staff. We are really set up to succeed in those 3 locations. All of the future locations will be franchised. So Seymour, Indiana opened the last week of February, and I was there for the opening. Josh and Jason, they're local, Southern Illinois. I always say that. Southern Indiana boys, card collectors. Their kids are all about it. Community is phenomenal there. And I was fortunate enough to be there for their opening. I helped them, finalize the shop. And it's amazing. The really cool thing about Replay is it would be cool to open 100 shops, me to open 100 shops. But what's even cooler is me opening 3 shops and then allowing 97 collectors the opportunity to open a Replay location with great structure, great SOPs, a support staff that really sets them up to succeed. If they succeed, we succeed. If they fail, we fail. And so we're really behind them and helping them along the way, determining really good factors for franchisees, again, it comes down to good people that love cards, that want to build a card community in their community. And Seymour, Indiana happened to be underserved, and it's an area where a really good shop with good customer experience could go a long way. And we saw that this, the last week of February. And so Replay, that's our main framework, is the franchise model, allowing collectors that want to open a shop in their community, giving them the opportunity to do so. And then on top of that, we stream 18 to 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on TikTok Live. We're getting jump started on eBay Live, which I'm super excited about. That'll be an awesome platform for us. And we also do Whatnot streams 2 to 3 times a week. Those are more single streams. And then TikTok and eBay will be more break and some single focused. But we have a large digital presence. We do franchise. And then probably the coolest thing we do is our Replay Gives Back campaign. So Replay Gives Back is our charity component. We go to local shows. We'll be at the National, we'll be at Fanatics Fest, set up, our normal setup, buying, selling, and trading, but also taking in donations. We've collected over 2 million cards for kids. We take those cards, package them into 25 card packs, give them out to charities. We've given out tens of thousands of packs to kids, both local to our shops, but also across the country. Did a really cool thing in Chicago. We collected a bunch of cards at the National last year and did some really cool drops with Boys and Girls Club at their flag football tournament. I was up in Detroit last year for the draft with my business partner, Brent Skeppel. That was amazing. We got to give out a bunch of packs to Big Brothers, Big Sisters. We partner with Clark Park Initiation, which is another thing in Detroit where they help youth, hockey, kids that want to play hockey there, give them packs. We're making our own packs, but also sending out some really cool packs for them as well. So it really is the coolest thing we do, but all of those things tie together. And again, the mission statement is simple. It's building community through cards. That's what we're all about. That's the Replay way. We do that in our shops. We do that on stream. We do that, at our charity drops. We do that at card shows across the country. And so that's kind of, my word vomit way of explaining to you what the Replay sports card, family and the Replay way is.
No, I love it. And again, anytime, when it comes to philanthropy, giving back, right? That kid that's getting that pack of cards, right? Maybe that might be how he starts collecting, right?
100%.
He might be on this podcast saying, hey, when I got that pack from Replay, I loved them. And maybe he's the next card store owner or franchise, right? You don't know.
Yep.
Like that little act, that little act of kindness could be a big ripple down the line. From some, I'll make up a person's name. Jim contacts you and says, "Hey, I'm in this city, wherever. I want to be a franchise, of a Replay Sports Cards. If all the stuff works out from that initial call, like what's the time frame to like a grand opening? I mean, every situation's different, but
sure.
in general."
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So we would, again, go through the full process. So background check, make sure it's a card person, right? That's super important to us, that they want to, not only make money through the Replay franchise program, but to also, be a card person, be someone that wants to build, community in and around their community through cards is super important. We would designate that we're not in the business of putting other shops out of business. It's the complete opposite. We're just trying to find areas that, need good card shops, and we want to pop them up there. So as long as, everything checks out, Jim sounds like a great dude. Definitely call me, Jim. I would love to set you up at the shop. But Jim would go through the process. Once he goes through the process, we would start looking at spots for him to potentially open up. We've got an entire real estate team that, would go through the process, make sure they're good. If we like the spot, we would, sign an LOA. And from there, honestly, the shop build out is, we built our Charlotte shop in a month. We just, every single day, nonstop, we built it in a month. Realistically, I would say probably, he signs the paperwork to be a franchisee within, 4 to 6 months they're open. We always like to do a soft opening before a grand opening, get the staff acclimated, make sure the community knows we're there. And then, a month or so after that, we'll do a grand opening. So Seymour was end of February. They'll probably have their grand opening sometime in April. Allows, again, the staff, the franchisees to get comfortable and the community to know we're there. And then we'll do a big grand opening for them as well. So, they can open up as quick as 2 or 3 months, all the way to, again, depending on if real estate takes a little longer or, we're having trouble finding a spot in that area. We're opening a shop in Nashville, Tennessee, which will be really cool. That'll come in the spring. That might be a little, it was going to take a second to find a spot. But hopefully we lock that spot in. Once we lock the spot in, that's the easy part. We paint it, we get it, we get our cases in there. We get our product. We're for all Salina, Kansas, and Nashville, Tennessee. Those are our 2 other signed franchise agreements. We're already buying product for them. We're already buying slabs for them and singles and setting up the infrastructure on the back end so that once the space is ready to rock, we're getting in there or they're getting in there. They're helping us set up the framework. And I would say, long-winded way of saying probably 4 to 6 months is pretty realistic, but I wouldn't be surprised if some of these pop open 2 or 3 months after we sign them. Just depends sometimes on real estate and all of that stuff. But everything after real estate, once we have the keys, it's easy.
So you are like allocating or getting like wax and product to each of these stores and locations. Now yeah, go ahead.
Oh, no, I'm sorry to interrupt. No, I was going to say, so our 3 locations, Charlotte, Boca Raton, and Denver, those 3 we're direct with all the, the Tops, Upper Deck, Panini. The future shops and all the franchisees, they sign on knowing there's no direct guarantee from any of those. Tops, for example, they pause their direct accounts. Panini, we'll wait till they're open. Once they're open, then we start, trying to get those locked in. But without that, Brent Skeppel, he is integral in what we do. He is my business partner. I'm super tight with him. Him and I started the entire thing back in 21, and he's like the card expert. So he's got so many connections between the wax, the singles, both retail wax and a hobby wax, that we're securing that at good enough prices, especially with the bulk buying, with the multiple shop situation, where we're able to stock their shops and restock their shops without any direct allocation. That would just be a cherry on top. And so we're building out these models with that in mind. We're not waiting to open a shop until we're allowed distribution. I think sometimes people try to open up shops specifically to get distribution or get allocation. That's not our game. Our game is cards through community through cards, getting a really good shop with a really good customer experience in these cities and in these small towns, and then hopefully those opportunities come knocking on our door. But yeah, it's a really awesome process, and but we handle that entire process, and then help them with their buying patterns when people come in and sell them stuff in shop as well.
Now, for a potential owner, do you have any rules in place? Like, you have to be open 10 to 8 Monday through Friday, or can you speak to those?
Of course. Yeah. So all of our franchise locations will be 7 days a week. The time we collaborate and figure out a good time based on the other shops in the area. Some shops will close at 6. Some shops will close at 8. Some shops may be open, they might be open the same, open and close the same time every day. And they might have different hours, for a Friday and a Saturday. So it'll depend a little bit on times, but yes, all replay shops will be 7 days a week. That is a requirement. And then from there, again, all the buying patterns, what we're buying, what we're selling, what we're trading at, that type of stuff is all in. Like, we bring them. There's franchisee training for a week, sometimes a week and a half, 2 weeks, to make sure they're fully prepared. And then we're with them for the opening and for that first weekend, and we kind of roll through that. And then the franchise model is retail only, right? And so one thing that that happens sometimes is people get excited. You open a shop. All right, I want to start breaking. All right, I want to start doing this. And then you lose all of the energy, which should be focused on the retail experience. And you start spreading out that bandwidth, spreading out your staff. We started a full-on, digital program 4 years into opening. And we did that purposefully. We did breaks here and there, a couple single shows, but we had no business and no interest in starting digital and streaming until just last year, because that's when we felt really good about where our shops are, what product they have on the shelves, what singles they have in the showcase. And so, down the road, maybe franchisees will be able to stream, but right now the sole focus is, give your community an amazing retail experience. And then from there, 6 months, 12 months, assess and find some potential partnerships there. But it's retail focused, 7 days a week, 2 people in the shop. You'll have a GM, you'll have an AGM, and you'll kind of roll through that stuff and have some full-time and part-time staff, all fully vetted, background check and all that stuff to make sure that we're putting the best people that we can behind the counter, putting the Replay logo on them.
You may have answered my next question with your sort of last line or two there, right? With the GM and the 2
Sure.
people. And you hope it doesn't happen, right? But unfortunately, we hear stories of some unscrupulous folks. We've got FedEx and postal workers stealing packages. If
Sure.
you get in a situation where it comes to your attention that one of your franchisees, whatever they're doing, is doing some stuff that's not above board. And again, I hope this never happens, but it's something I'm sure you've thought about as you want. Like, what's the sort of the protocol? Is that where the 2 people kind of come in play? That if one person has to go, you still don't miss a beat. You kind of keep going and
yeah,
or how?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, honestly, again, like you said, knock on wood. I'll knock on my head. I don't have any wood next to me, but honestly, like that's definitely something, again, like you said, could happen. Hopefully it doesn't. We have really, really tight inventory systems. We have really, really tight reporting. And so there's stock takes that happen weekly. There's, every piece of inventory in the shops are accounted for. And so things start to go missing. You can kind of nip that stuff in the bud and, make sure that everything's being taken care of. There's security cameras. There's a security system in each of our shops. We put them in safe locations so that, look, in Charlotte, we got robbed, external, not anyone inside, from Replay, but, we got hit. And, thankfully, again, like, being with us, we're giving, we have the right insurance programs and stuff like that help protect. Someone, God forbid, comes in the store, have it all, like we are not at the risk of anyone from our team being in a bad, position and feeling like they have to be Superman, have it all. We are not in the position of anyone, being in a bad spot like that and trying to save the day or anything like that. But yeah, I mean, there's parameters in place. There's, I'm sure specifically, I'm not a lawyer, but, my business partner is, so I let him handle that stuff. There's parameters in the franchise, documents to protect against, stuff like that. But yeah, again, and I think it really starts really with that framework of good people, vetting them, walking through protocols, and then again, having a really strong inventory system where if one box or one card is missing, it's every week there's an inventory stock, and that's going to be really easy to find out and get to the bottom of it, with the cameras and inventory system. So probably a non-factor, but you're right. I mean, you never know.
No, and that's not, it's not the greatest. It's not a positive thing necessarily, but it's just how my mind works. I figured I'd ask that question. You mentioned maybe getting up to 100 stores in 3 years. One thing I loved hearing you say is, like, you're obviously not just putting them in random places or throwing darts at a dartboard. You're doing the demographics. You're like, hey, this area is in need of something like this. There's not 10 stores there already, and we're going to be the 11th. We're serving a need for the community. Just a general question. This is not at Replay itself, but you ever think, and we see more stores opening just naturally across the board, you think there's a saturation point when it comes to LCSs where there could be too many and maybe the bottom line gets affected? I've asked this question with shows as well. We're seeing all these we're seeing shows where like the two shows in one city, and there was in Pittsburgh, there was two card shows literally across the street from each other. When it comes to LCSs though, is there like a tipping point or a saturation point? Obviously the market will bear that out. That's the easy answer, but from a schematics or a demo, like, how do you see that?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of underserved areas. There really, really are. And again, like I'm excited to open in Nashville, but I'm opening in Nashville not because it's a flashy city, but I'm opening in Nashville because we've got a fantastic RJ is a fantastic, franchisee. He's going to be amazing, and he's going to lead that community with really good efforts. And again, put it in a spot where we're not, Nash Cards does great over there. I'm not going to put it next door, and so. Designating those areas. I think there's a lot of places. The amount of times I hear on our streams or, people visiting from out of town, like, man, we need one of these here. Like, I got to drive an hour. I mean, there are 50 states, however many cities, however many small towns, there's a lot of opportunity. So no, I don't really think so. And for me, like, give me the Kansases, give me the Seymour, Indianas. Like, I want the areas that, I would love to be. I'm a gambler. I would love to be, in Vegas, and I'm sure we'll be there at some point. But we love the guys over at Paradise. Again, I'm not going to open up next door. I'm going to, make sure it makes sense. And so I'm not going for the, the flashy, headliney, big splash areas. Again, we'll hit them just by chance. Denver's not a small town, right? And so, I can't say we're only going to open up in small towns. But I want a lot of that. I want a lot of people that are eager to. They're getting into breaks because they don't even have a shop near them. And so that to me is really, really important. And again, we'll open up in the big cities for sure. But those small towns mean a lot to us, and we want to serve the collectors in those areas that haven't had a card shop their entire life. Like I couldn't imagine that. I could not imagine being an hour away from a card shop. Like, that is terrible. We got to get replay, in that town or in the surrounding areas and cut that drive time, because it's only going to grow the community. It's only going to grow the next generation of collectors.
Yeah, well said. And like you said, I'm a New York City kid growing up in Brooklyn. And so There was always, whether it be I'm old enough where it was the corner store, but as I got older, it was, there was card shops. I even worked. That's how I really cut my teeth, was working as a 12 or 13-year-old kid in the card store. The owner's like, Newman, you're here so much, I might as well put you to work. So, again, card store, LCSs will always have that place in my heart. And I think they're just so vital and crucial to the success of the hobby overall. So, I'm definitely waving that pennant for sure. Well, I appreciate. I know you're a busy guy, Mike. I appreciate you making some time for us and our listeners. As always, I give the guests kind of the final word. Give out any social medias, websites, anything. No rush. Take your time. Whatever you want to share with those listening to direct them where to go to see what you guys are doing.
I appreciate you, and thank you so much for having me on. I love this platform and how you again, I feel like I'm just hanging out talking with someone in one of our shops. And so this is a really, really great platform you have, and a great little community you got going on as well. We love it. I hopefully we can connect again in 6 or 12 months and see kind of how we've grown and what we're up to, for sure.
Well, I was going to say, Mike, like, I usually have people back on too. So by all means, as long as you want to come back, we're all right. All right.
I love it. Yeah. But to plug us real quick, replaysportscards.com, pretty much Replay Sports Cards on all platforms. TikTok, we're live 7 days a week. We'll be on eBay Live. We'll be on Whatnot as well. You could follow us on Instagram and Facebook as well. But you'll be able to find us, Replay Sports Cards, and then our sub shops, Replay Denver and Replay Seymour, have have some shops going or some channels going. But again, John, really thank you so much for being on. It's amazing to share, you know, my business and what we're doing and the good we're doing for the hobby, and just want to get our voice out there. And again, your platform's fantastic. So thank you so much for having me on.
I appreciate you coming on. Like you said, I know you got a travel schedule and you're a dad and all the stuff that goes along.
I wish I was a dad. I'm not a dad yet. I mean, Replay's my baby, so I guess I kind of am a dad too. Replay.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
there you go.
Yeah.
So, well, you still listen. I got the busy part right. I got the busy,
100%. I just didn't want my parents. They'll be watching this back. They'll be like, "You're a dad now? What is going on?" So,
when did this happen?
Yeah, when did this happen? No, I appreciate it. Eventually, I'll have a family and I'll be a dad. But for now, Replay's my baby. But yes, I am very busy, and I'm happy to take more time, and you and I can sit down. And if you're at any shows and we cross paths, we'll go grab a beer and hang out.
Yeah, no doubt. I'm attending the Nationals, so maybe that'll be.
We'll see you there.
Hope to see you there, meet you,
100%.
And a handshake. And like you said, I like beer, so you won't get any arguments from me there.
I love it.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.